first early season, considering the way that it all played out. This was not a night where anybody was. This is a night where, you get the news right before the game that Giannis is one of the best players in the league is not playing for Milwaukee. And I feel like at the beginning of this little 2-game trip, this becomes a game that immediately, if you're the Warriors, you have to try to go get, and you have to be able to play buttoned up enough to get. And it looked like the Warriors were hanging around enough to where and the Nuggets, and then they wind up losing in Portland, and what I think you could say was kind of a schedule loss there. They come back home, they get a couple of wins Monday and Tuesday. And look, the games are coming still rapid fire with the travel. It is the third game in 4 nights for the Warriors, and we talked about the 5-8 to begin, and now it's 6-10 basically to begin the season. And, the Warriors at times, I think when there's travel involved, and I'm not making any kind of an excuse, they're just not going to maybe be as fresh as you would like them to be. It's part of having a little bit of an older team. And you just, I think on some of these nights are not going to know how locked in everybody is. And are you going to be able to outshoot the fact that maybe you're not as locked in? And, in this one, the Warriors are not. They let Ryan Rollins kind of get going. They let some other players on the Bucks, Cole Anthony in particular, get going. And then there are other pros that can knock down shots and make plays and bring energy. And we've seen, Doc Rivers, they made a point to basically try to make things really physical on Steph and Curry. And Steph had a poor shooting night at 8 of 19. He winds up 4 for 10 from 3-point range, but 27 points. Warriors got to the line a ton in this game. That was helping to keep them in it. But all in all, it winds up being a 120-110 loss in Milwaukee here. So the Warriors, after beginning the year 4-1, they lose this one. So now 1-2 on the road, 4-2 overall. And again, I think this is, and it's early. We're a week and a couple of days in. I think this one's a worse loss, frankly, than the game in Portland, considering the circumstances. Although the one thing that both of the Portland game and tonight's game have in common is third game in 4 nights and with some travel involved. Although the Warriors did travel yesterday and get to Milwaukee. And look, there's no excuse for not being ready to go against a team that doesn't have their superstar player. And yeah, I know they were talking about it a lot on the television broadcast. The Bucks were 8-7 last year without Giannis, and it gives others an opportunity to play. And there is typically for a game or two, a shot in the arm that can come from other players being able to show up and show out with respect to a star player being out, and it gives others an opportunity to thrive. But again, the Warriors just not enough intent on the game that and I think sometimes when it flips late before tip-off, like you're anticipating Giannis is going to play, and this is a big-time matchup, and, there's always a ton of chatter between, what's going on with the Warriors and their perpetual interest in Giannis, and you're just juiced to play. I think if you're Steph, we talk about it all the time, the fact that the Warriors are kind of adrenaline junkies in that they like the big games. They like going up against the big stars. They like the statement games on national television, although this was an NBA TV game, I think, tonight for the national audience or for the out-of-market audience. But it's not the same as NBC against the Clippers or the Lakers or ESPN against Denver. And we see the Warriors rise to the challenge in those games, getting through and having the emotional, energy in addition to the physical energy in some of these games that wind up being perceived as lesser valued or lesser important. I think, in the early stages here, this game tonight and the game against Portland, in addition to the layout of the schedule, both 3 games in 4 nights on the road, is something that I do think is notable. Not an excuse, but notable for the simple fact that the Golden State Warriors are still a much older team, and the Golden State Warriors are going to have to try to navigate this season. And, the last couple of games would make you believe that you'd think that this team would have enough to be able to win enough to get into the 50 win range. And the young players play great one night. Steph's doing his thing on another night, kind of light work, all things considered, the last couple of games. But then you got to bring it night in, night out. You got to bring it if you're going to be headed out on the road. And again, answering that bell over and over and over when you're not maybe going up against the cream of the crop across the NBA. I think, and I've said it for years, and in particular, even after the Jimmy Butler trade going back to February, the Warriors do rise to the occasion in a lot of these games against some of these better teams. And so I think for them, it is a little bit of a letdown. But let's get into some of the details as it relates to this one. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. It is John Dickinson. It's Dubs OT with JD here on The Sports Leader. We'll be with you until about 9 o'clock or so. We got the best YouTube chat in sports off and rolling. Appreciate everybody filing into the chat here on this Thursday night for a little Dubs OT. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open as well. So if you want to jump in and join the conversation there, we can. Kyle Haar has the night off. The man you see in our San Francisco studios tonight is a man that will be filling in for Kyle Haar here and there over the course of the season. We do have some depth at The Sports Leader. But Cole Appelt is hanging out in our San Francisco studios. So a big, warm Dubs OT. He works a lot behind the scenes from time to time on the Dubs OT shows. But Cole, I'll just give you a quick shout out and welcome to everybody here on the Dubs OT family on The Sports Leader.
What's going on, y'all? Happy to be here.
Yeah, Cole, one of the best in the business. So Cole's going to be kind of hanging out. But yeah, some other thoughts on this one. Just kind of running through it. 808 KNBR, again, couple of lines open here to start the show. We'll get to some calls as we get through this, and we'll get a little Cole's clicks tonight with Cole sitting in for Kyle Haar. First quarter, Ryan Rollins, from the jump, killing the Warriors. He just got off, and the Bucks were scoring off the Warriors' turnovers. Warriors down 17-13 early. Kuminga looked good. Haven't mentioned Jonathan Kuminga. Aside from the turnovers, and he was a part of the turnover party tonight for the Dubs, but he ended up with 5. Steph ended up with 5 among the 22 turnovers, so 19 individual turnovers. There were 3 team turnovers in this game, 27 points for the Bucks off of those turnovers. But Kuminga, I'm giving him a positive nod, even in pointing out the 5 turnovers, because his offense, in particular in the first half, was key to preventing the game from getting out of hand a lot quicker. The Warriors were never really out of the game until about the 3-minute mark, and even then they made a couple of plays there. Jimmy Butler with a steal. Kuminga had a layup. They got it to within 7 and had the ball with Kuminga getting downhill to the rim. He just missed a little short one in there. And then the Bucks are able to basically put the game away in the final 2 minutes from that point. But yeah, the Bucks shoot 60% in the first quarter. Warriors 2 for 12 on threes. Curry did not score until it was 49-40 in the second quarter. But yeah, the Warriors down 9 at 34-25 after 1. I thought the first key stretch of the game was a 10-2 run by Milwaukee to close the first quarter and extend what was a 1-point lead in kind of a back and forth contest all the way up to a 9-point lead at the end of the quarter. So the Warriors down 9 go into the second, down 10 when Curry comes back into the game. Early in that second quarter, around that 8-minute mark, Bobby Portis started to get rolling. We talked about Curry getting his first bucket, and Jonathan Kuminga, again, keeping the Warriors in the game with the first half that he was able to have long enough for Steph toward the end of the second quarter, and then Jimmy Butler as the game went on to kind of come alive. But it really was not an efficient night by any stretch for Steph and Curry or Jimmy Butler. It was a much more efficient night for Kuminga, who ended up with 24 to go with Steph's 23 and Steph's 27 and Jimmy Butler's 23. So you look at it, and the Warriors just not effective enough, not defensive, not a lot of defensive intent. Again, I thought they were confused at times in terms of what they were looking to do in terms of switching and rotations, but I also think a lot of it comes down to just effort and energy. And whoever you wind up guarding, keep them in front of you, and stop giving up so many open looks and allowing for players to get comfortable in the first half of a game to where they will knock down some shots because you allowed them to get comfortable in the back end of the game. And I thought that's exactly what they did in this one, especially as it related to Ryan Rollins. But yeah, Kuminga kept him in it. Warriors end up in this one down by 2 at halftime, but looked like maybe they were going to be able to take control in the third quarter, but they could not extend a lead after pulling out to a 79-75 advantage. The Bucks hit back-to-back threes from there to take an 81-79 lead. Kuminga got banged up. I thought that was another little key stretch in this one because Kuminga was playing so well. He got banged up right in that sequence where Milwaukee hit a couple of threes there to take the lead and ended up going out of the game, I think, a little bit sooner than would have been his normal rotation. Now, Steve Kerr brought him back early in the fourth quarter and brought Steph back and brought Draymond back and brought Jimmy back early in the fourth quarter. Steve was going for this one tonight with the 1 day in between games and another off day tomorrow. No back-to-back moving forward into Saturday against Indiana before the team comes back home for some games on the West Coast coming up in the middle of next week at home against Phoenix and then over to Sacramento. But games started slipping away right in that moment after the back-to-back threes, and then Kuminga got banged up and left the game, and the Bucks immediately extended it again, 6 more points there. So it was a 12-0 run from where the Warriors were up 79-75 to an advantage of 87-79 in favor of Milwaukee. Now, Jimmy Butler hit a big three, and Butler closed the quarter again. Warriors hanging around. Butler closed the quarter with a 3, and then he got to the free throw line, and it really kind of saved, I thought, the third quarter. Warriors ended up only losing that quarter by a point to trail by 3 going to the fourth. And like we talked about, Curry was out there at the beginning of the fourth. Second chance points became an issue for the Warriors. They looked a little sluggish in terms of getting on the board tonight, just a half step slow. But again, throughout the early part of the fourth quarter, Buddy Hield hits a bailout 3 to cut the lead to 1. Cole Anthony fouls out, and Cole Anthony was really killing the Warriors throughout the course of the game. So you're thinking, and Kuminga draws that foul on him. You're thinking at that point, all right, that's one of the weapons. And how is Milwaukee going to have enough offense to try and finish this game in a positive light, not having Giannis? And yeah, they had a couple of guys on a heater, and Rollins was doing his thing. But you're thinking, hey, if this thing can die out, even for about a 3 or a 4 minute stretch, if the Warriors can play buttoned up enough defense to kind of force them into it, that you were a couple of buckets away off of some of that defense from maybe taking a little bit of a lead, but it was not meant to be here. Horford hit a 3, but then AJ Green was able to answer back. The Bucks push it out to 103-96, and the Warriors again trying to fight and scratch and keep themselves in the game. Curry had his free throw streak lost down the stretch in this one, but just all in all, not enough energy for Golden State. I think the biggest issue of the evening for the Dubs, just not enough energy, not enough intent, not enough focus in terms of understanding the opponent that you were going to play on this night. And, there should have been a belief in that Golden State Warriors locker room. There should have been a belief that, okay, Giannis is not playing. This is going to be a lesser team. And that doesn't mean that you let up if you're the Warriors. That means you get out there and you really put the clamp down and you make yourself felt, and you make Milwaukee uncomfortable to a point where they start having a bad night and they start looking around thinking that they're not going to have the ability to get the job done without their superstar player on a night where the Warriors had all of their stars, had all of their young players. Again, nobody getting a rest. I could understand this one maybe a little bit more if it was one of those second of a back-to-back. But the early overarching headline for me is going to be that the schedule is going to dictate a lot more about this team than the talent level of the opponent. because I think we've seen here that the Warriors through the first week and a half, and I'll even add in the way that they were able to finish going back to the end of last year after the trade, we've seen that the Warriors can beat anybody on any given night when they're rolling and when they're engaged and when they're feeling it. They've been able to show that. But they've got to be engaged. They've got to have a reason to play, and they've got to physically be able to expend the amount of energy that it takes to get these wins. And look, I don't think it's not a scenario where you say, hey, Steph doesn't shoot it well tonight. Jimmy and Draymond a little more sluggish. Young players have to go get it and just look to take up the slack. Like we saw the difference between the way the vets played aside from Steph in Portland. Jimmy and Draymond didn't really have it. And while I would agree Kuminga had it in that game and Kuminga had it tonight, it takes more than that. And you see the games where the Warriors vets are locked in and energetic and a part of the flow, a la the Memphis game on Monday. And those are the games when those guys are locked in, then you get the production from the Moody's and the Pajemskis and the Kumingas, and then the whole thing kind of flows. But it goes back to that conversation about, offensively, I still think the young players are at their best when the veteran players are in the lineup and at their best and playing well. And it becomes a matter of them being able to play off of the veteran players as opposed to looking to have to get their own because the veteran players are not playing as well. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Warriors lose this one to the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee, 120-110. So the Dubs 4-2 on the season. Give credit to the Bucks. They improved to 4-1, and they get the job done tonight without Giannis. And now the Warriors, for the first time, I think a little true adversity for the Warriors. I thought the game in Portland was kind of a throwaway type of a game against a younger, more athletic type team. And I guess you could make the case a little bit more of a veteran, but young and kind of athletic type team without Giannis. Again, no Giannis, there's really no excuse. I mean, this is a game that even if you don't play well, I feel like, for the Warriors' goals in the regular season, this is a game when Giannis isn't going to play that you need to go win. You just flat out need to go get. And if the Warriors are going to be incapable of having enough in the tank to bring it on a night like tonight to where even games like this get vulnerable, it is something that will start to make me kind of question what the regular season ceiling can be for this team in terms of wins. And then that's the kind of thing that makes you start to wonder, all right, well, what type of seeding are they going to be in that mix for in a really tough and competitive Western Conference? All right, 808 KNBR. Let's take a quick timeout. We'll come back and we will dive into the YouTube chat. We'll get our first installment of Cole's Clicks here on Dubs OT. We'll get to the phones and the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. Biggest thing that stood out, biggest issue tonight, biggest concern tonight, short term as far as how it related to this game, or maybe a bigger picture concern as far as something to be worried about moving forward for the Dubs? Or is it just a one-off? Hard for me to say it's a one-off when you get beat like that and Giannis doesn't play. But we're here. We're talking about it. 808 KNBR. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader.
This is KNBR, and this is Dubs OT with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Ryan Rollins on Horford, adds to the career high. Wow.
Yeah, it was a wow night for Ryan Rollins, the former Warrior draft pick, as he goes for 32. And they were talking about a little bit on the TV broadcast. He won the matchup tonight against Steph Curry, going for 32. Curry goes for 27, and Rollins much more efficient. Bucks get the win over the Warriors, 120-110, the final. We welcome you back. It's Dubs OT with JD here as we get into the 8 o'clock hour on the Sports Leader. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. The biggest short-term concern or disappointment based on tonight's game is kind of a question on the board here to start things. And also the bigger picture concern, it's just the ability for this team to get through the season for me, because we're learning, and every year you learn more and more about what different things potentially give this year's group issues. And it's early, but at the same time, the schedule and the attrition and the fatigue and the age, that is the one thing here, I think, in the first week and a half with all these games and not a lot of rest time, that you're just going to see games pop up where they just don't have it. And it almost doesn't matter who the opponent is. And that's the thing that I think can make it a lot more confounding if you're a Warriors fan, and, knowing full well what the expectations are for this team, which is to try and, get in the playoffs and contend for an NBA championship. So let's get to the phones. 808 KNBR, got a couple of lines open, but let's start it off here with Danny in Vancouver, this segment here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Danny, what's going on tonight?
Hey, JD. Good to speak to you. It's like a group therapy line for Warriors fans, it feels like. This was strange. I agree with you. I didn't feel there was a lot of energy. I think that was a problem. And I totally agree with you that there was a point in the third quarter when they were up 5 and they came down 2 or 3 times and they couldn't get a basket. And I felt the game was hanging right there. And when they couldn't do that and Milwaukee started to score and take the lead again, I thought that was it. I felt like that was the moment, but I was hoping, maybe we're going to pick it up in the fourth, but it just didn't happen. I appreciate Steve Kerr going for it, as you say, not trying to spare anyone. I mean, just to go for the win. I don't know. I think it's, to answer your question, JD, your question tonight, I think it's too early to draw too much, I would say. The first Portland game could have been an outlier, and maybe now it's not, but I think it's too early. I don't know if it's an age thing or whatever, but, I didn't see the Warriors being aggressive. They didn't seem to be taking command of the game at any point. They just seemed tentative. Some of the turnovers were really kind of stupid, sloppy, thoughtless, no intent on the passes and so on. I'm curious what you thought of that. And my question for you is, why did we give up on Ryan Rollins so quickly? Thank you, JD.
Yeah, that is, I think, the other kind of big picture question, in terms of, he was kind of a throw-in going back to the Chris Paul trade. And then he winds up with, he ended up with Washington after the Chris Paul trade, 2022 draft pick of the Golden State Warriors. And he was just kind of a throw-in. It ends up being somebody that he makes a couple of stops, and, he was somebody that just nobody really thought highly of in terms of the ability to play at this level. Clearly the Warriors liked him, and he's still at this stage only 23 years old. But he was somebody that the scouting report on him was that he was a really good defensive player that would make his name in the league, doing that, and might be kind of a, somebody you throw on a guard to try and cool him down a little bit. But yeah, you go back to 2022-23, played in just the 12 games with the Warriors, and then ends up moving on to Washington and then ultimately to Milwaukee, where he averaged 6 points a game and started about, I think, 20 games or so last year, played about 15 minutes a game last year, and he's gotten an opportunity to get in there this year, and he's been terrific in these first 5 games for Milwaukee, and guy that can score and showing that he's somebody that can produce. So yeah, at that point, I mean, they had the Warriors they had drafted Pajemski. They were looking to get Chris Paul into the mix. It was that weird time where the Warriors were trying to figure out how to try to attempt to make the team better and try to get off of Jordan Poole's contract as well. And so it wound up being one of those deals where the Wizards had acquired Chris Paul and the Warriors take Chris Paul back and Poole goes to Washington. And then anytime you do a big extravagant deal, there become throw-ins for salary purposes. Hey, we'll take this guy, we'll take that guy, kind of like that guy. And so Rollins winds up being somebody that ends up in that deal. As far as the rest of it, yeah, I do think the Portland game in and of itself was an outlier, but I think now when you couple the game tonight with what we saw in Portland, it's starting to, again, it's probably a little bit early, but it's starting to feel like a little bit more of a trend in terms of the, back-to-back 3 games in 4 nights, travel involved. It was 5 and 8. Now it's 6 and 10. You added another flight yesterday from the Bay all the way out to the Midwest. Again, no excuses, but it's kind of a question of, why does this team not have it on a night like tonight? Is it not being focused? Is it a letdown because you think you're automatically going to roll the ball out and go win because Giannis isn't playing for Milwaukee? Is it an issue where, what leads to having all of these turnovers? What leads to 22 turnovers? Is it carelessness? Is it you're a little bit overmatched? Like, I don't look at Milwaukee player for player and think that they should be overmatching with the roster that they put out there. AJ Green and Ryan Rollins and Kyle Kuzma, Gary Trent Jr., Miles Turner, who's a nice player. But Cole Anthony taking it to him. Taurean Prince, Bobby Portis. I mean, it was basically an eight-man rotation tonight for the Bucks, and all 8 got to 10-plus points. And they played some really, I thought, energized defense. And the Warriors gave away too many possessions and then didn't shoot the basketball well enough to where even though they got to the free throw line, the Bucks were just kind of doing what they wanted, to the point on going for it at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Yeah, the game was kind of hanging in the balance. And I do give Steve Kerr credit for looking at, all right, I'm going to get Steph out there with Kuminga real quickly and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, early on in that quarter to try and make a run. And I think he was thinking, hey, if we can play a good beginning to this quarter, then I'll sub accordingly. And obviously you're not going to have Steph play the whole second half of a game on October the 30th, or Jimmy or Draymond in terms of long. So you're going to sub those guys at some point, but the hope, I think, is that maybe you can get a little bit of a lead and then you have the ability to sub here and there to kind of maintain that lead enough to where you can get everybody back in the game with about 4 minutes to go and, have the ability to get enough to win it in that fashion. So 808 KNBR, let's continue on the phone lines here with Eric in San Francisco next here on the Sports Leader. Eric, you're on Dubs OT. Warriors lose. This is a tough one. Not a good loss for the Dubs tonight in Milwaukee with Giannis out.
Yeah, JD. Yeah, that was a terrible loss. The thing that bugs me about tonight, and is like a constant through line through the past couple of years, is like basically the magic number for the Warriors is really 15 turnovers. Like if they stay under 8, which they did in the other 4 games they won, they usually win. And when they start throwing the ball around, and I do draw this back to a flaw that Steph and Draymond both have a tendency to be careless with the ball and have been for years. Anytime they go near that 18 to 20 and they went over 20 turnovers against the Blazers, and they won for 22 tonight, they generally lose. And that's because they're just giving up too many possessions, you know? And it's like, if you're going to have the high variance by being, you know, a 50% 3-point team in terms of shots taken, so that if you're not hitting your threes, then if you lose the possession game because you're giving up so many turnovers, which has been, it was fine when we had KD and Steph was in his prime. You know, you could give away extra possessions, but when the margins become that small and you just throw the ball away, how many times did they just make a careless pass, like Brzezinski throwing the three-quarter pass, you know, three-quarter court pass, or Steph, you know, doing the behind the back, or Draymond making a careless entry pass. I really think that, and it's frustrating because, you know, this is something that the team has had going all the way back to, like, you know, 14, 15. It's just kind of like, I don't understand why they can't better protect the ball, because this isn't the dynasty year teams where they could give away the loose possessions. I mean, maybe you disagree with me, but I really think that and the lack of production at center over the years have been their two Achilles heel. And
it's the unforced nature, Eric, of them. I mean, that's really what it is. It's the unforced nature of the turnovers. And it's also, I think what you're getting at is the lessened margin for error as it relates to, you know, this team having to play more buttoned up on a night in, night out basis to earn these victories. So it becomes more frustrating. It's, hey, you know, you have to be more mistake free in order to win a lot of these games. And yet they have a tendency on a lot of these nights to be as mistake prone, some of the games, as we've seen through those years when they clearly had more than enough talent to be able to make up for it and wipe it away with a great 8 to 10 minute stretch.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, if you're going to be high variance on the threes, then you've got to offset that with being a little more protective of the ball when you don't have a KD and peak Steph. I just don't understand. Like I said, it's the unforced live ball turnovers. I don't have a problem if it's a charge or it's a dead ball where you can set your defense, but when they can get out on the break easily, that's going to create a breakdown in your transition defense, and they're going to lose. I mean, or at least that's how I see it, as the two corresponding factors of the Blazers and tonight was just live ball turnovers led to transition breakdown D, and you lose to a lesser talented team.
No question. And I think and it opens the door against some of those lesser talented teams that are hungry because they're playing the Warriors. The Warriors are always going to get, I think, a team's best shot in terms of effort. Now, whether they have the ability to execute or the talent on a given night, you know, remains to be seen. We can kind of let that play out night to night, but, you know, teams are always going to be excited. So if you allow them to become engaged in the game because you're giving up the careless turnovers, it only enhances their ability to get everything into a rhythm and feel confident that they can beat you on that given night. So no, I well said, Eric.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the call. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. We move through the evening here. Dubs OT with JD on the Sports Leader. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well. 808 KNBR if you want to jump in on the phone lines here to join the conversation. We'll get to our first installment. Cole, you ready to roll, man? You ready to roll through some of these in the YouTube chat here on this fine Thursday night? Let's get our first installment of Cole's Clicks. Cole, what do you got?
Let's go, JD.
Let's keep them moving. Let's do it. What do we got? All right, Bennett Roth checking in. Can't say Kerr isn't able to develop young players. Ryan Rollins is exhibit A of that tonight. Okay, LOL. Bennett running a little bit of material here to begin the show. Although there has been the discussion point, I will say that a lot of the guys, the Warriors, give up on. I think I'm using that term loosely as it relates to Ryan Rollins, but a lot of the guys that end up going elsewhere don't end up having necessarily great NBA careers. That's been kind of a talking point. Rollins would obviously be one that looks like the way he played tonight, the way he's played to begin the year, is going to maybe fall into a completely different category. And look, the reality of the situation is, like, we can quibble about what anybody thought Ryan Rollins would or could or might be, as far as it relates to, what you thought of him coming up and what you thought he could eventually be at some point. But, he winds up being kind of a throw-in and a deal. But no matter that, if a player goes on to play the way that Ryan Rollins has played, and he goes on to, be a bona fide starter in the NBA, that's going to be something that will not be looked back on fondly. And you kind of open the door, I think, to some of those discussions as to, well, wait a minute, you got off Jordan Poole, Rollins goes in this deal, you get a year of Chris Paul, you didn't use Chris Paul's salary to get anything. Like, it kind of revisits. And look, the Warriors, I think, have moved past all of that to the best of their ability, and they believe that they've built a team that can contend for a championship if they can stay healthy and stay fresh throughout the course of the regular season to win enough games to get a good enough seed. But the reality is, anytime you have somebody go elsewhere and do that, it's something that may wind up not looking the best for you, years down the line. All right, what do we got else here in the YouTube chat from Bennett Roth? We move to Rebel to Sounds. Pods tries to do too much at times. He's got to learn to pick his spots and rotate the ball. Wholeheartedly agree with that one. I mean, tonight was another, I don't want to say non-existent Pods game, but just it was another game where Pods just has not really made himself felt in terms of his impact as it relates to being able to be that connector and help winning. Like, the plus minus numbers are not the same for Brandon Podziemski that we've seen here, through the years. He ends up at 26 minutes tonight. He's a -8. He had a couple of turnovers, part of the turnover brigade with, led by Curry and Kuminga with 5 apiece. And, he had a couple, and he gets caught in between, 9, 5, 3, just kind of a ho-hum game. But there's a difference. You can tell when Pods is in a rhythm versus when he's a little bit out of sorts. And I thought, tonight was one of those games where he was a little bit more out of sorts, and it leads to less efficiency. It leads to maybe getting caught in between, and not always necessarily to turnovers on the stat sheet, but leads to, just plays where he's making a pass to somebody that's not maybe in the best position to shoot it, or he's taking a shot from a position where maybe he's not in the best position to knock that shot down. So he's got to find it. It looked like maybe he was starting to find it the other night, but it's still very much a work in progress for Brandon Podziemski, I think, here to begin the season. And, how the Warriors wind up divvying up the starting lineup deal, because that's the other thing now, that big lineup, and they played well against the Clippers. That big lineup now, the Warriors are 1-2 in games where they start the big lineup with Quentin Post and they move Podziemski to the bench. A lot of people love that lineup. Again, you want to keep Draymond off the center spot. It was exceptional. I mean, it was a lineup that I think won them the game against the Clippers in large part because that group played so well together, especially early in both halves. So, I mean, it's still, I think, too early and too soon and not enough of a sample size to look at that lineup as if it's a fail. But we're kind of keeping track of everything as we continue to learn more. And I've said it, and I'm going to say it again. And I think the Warriors' best starting lineup for the regular season is the smaller starting lineup, whether it's Draymond at the 5 with Kuminga and Jimmy, Pods and Steph, or whether it's, and this isn't even on the table right now, but that lineup that they started because Kuminga's playing so well, this is not even on the table, but it's that lineup where it's Steph and Podziemski with Moody and Jimmy Butler and Draymond at the 5, or even hell, if you want to do, I know the fans like the Moody for pods, play Steph and Moody at the 2 with Kuminga and Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler, go about it that way. Those are 3 different smaller starting lineups. And I know the Warriors have to play big, and part of their success in this first week and a half has been the ability to play big. Again, I get it. I understand it. But I think in the regular season, sometimes it's better to just roll through and play small ball and try to get in an offensive rhythm. And it almost forces a little more energy in terms of your play. So again, I don't want to say it's everything. It might not be anything, but I definitely think you look at the lineup and both of these games, the one in Portland and the one tonight, they use that same starting lineup. And they wind up taking an L and kind of being out of sorts in both of those. But yeah, as Rebel says, Pods, he's got to just chill. He's got to chill and not look to do so much and just keep it moving and get out of his own head. It's really kind of the second straight year where Pods has just not been where you need him to be to begin the year. Now, he came out of it and played exceptionally well after that. I think he has the ability to do it. But again, it's, you definitely don't want to have Pods, especially considering some of the comments that he made about, being a future face of the franchise and take it over after Steph and all that. Then all those things start to pop up when you don't play well. And that only adds to the situation. All right, let's move forward here. A couple of more before we take another timeout here on Dubs OT with JD. What Erwin Kwong, Doc Rivers knows how to defend the Warriors' split actions. Yeah, Doc was on one tonight. They had a really nice game plan tonight, I thought, in terms of the way they look to defend and physicality. It just use what you've got: youth, energy, physicality. I thought they were extremely physical, and I think tonight was a night where the Bucks were clearly comfortable giving up some fouls. Cole Anthony fouled out. The Warriors got to the free throw line a ton, 25 out of 26 for the Dubs at the free throw line. Steph ended up with the one miss, but 26 free throw attempts. The Warriors doubled the Bucks free throw attempts in this game tonight. And I think, they were willing, and sometimes teams are willing to, hey, we'll foul you, and you'll go to the line. And I think teams do look at trying to do that to the Warriors maybe a little bit more because it takes their offense out of rhythm. And the Warriors also at times don't really hunt, other than Jimmy Butler. They don't really hunt to get to the line, and Kuminga's been doing a great job of it here to begin the season too. I should give him credit, but they just their offense is such to where you can be extremely physical. And they're not necessarily going to hunt to be, in the game for looking to just completely draw fouls on mismatches and just own the game basically at the free throw line. So yeah, hat tip to the Bucks. I think you do have to give them credit for the game that they played. Let's get 2 more here before we take another timeout from Erwin. We move on to San Jose Jazz fan 8. How many times have the Warriors choked going up against teams without their stars? It does seem to have happened. It was the Denver game last year is the one that stood out post Jimmy Butler trade. I kind of look at everything now under the lens of post Jimmy Butler trade, because it really is. Pre Jimmy Butler trade, we're in the beyond Klay Thompson era. That team wasn't very good. Then you go get Jimmy and they go 23-8. And so to me, and yeah, you can make the case it's happened at other points throughout the years, and it has. But I also think, how many times has it happened since the Jimmy Butler trade? And I think, that Denver game from last year in March is one that stands out. Tonight is a bad one. I think for sure, they handled their business against the Lakers, right? No LeBron. They handle business in that one. And then the Clippers and Grizzlies that had their guys going. But I think there is, and again, no excuses, but I do think it is a thing when star players don't play against the Warriors. There is a natural letdown because the Dubs, the main guys, Steph and Jimmy and Draymond, love going up against the other stars and in the marquee matchups. And I just, the Warriors get, their cup fills up in games like that. Their cup fills up in games like that. And I think sometimes it's hard to fill the cup up on a night like tonight. All right, one more here before we take a timeout. Let's continue on with Max Lopez. I don't understand why Pods and Moody are jacking threes mid-third quarter in the middle of an 8-0 run. Get twos, steady the ship. Yeah, there were some bad shots. We talked about that stretch after the Warriors got up 4, and then the Bucks hit back-to-back threes, and then Kuminga got banged up and left the game, and then that's right where the game started to slip away, and there were a couple of bad shots in that stretch from Podziemski and later from Moses Moody, and the Warriors really, I mean, could have lost the game right there had it not been for Jimmy Butler at the end of the third quarter with the three that was kind of a launch for him, and then getting to the free throw line. But yeah, I mean, Moody was not good tonight as well. You know, that's another thing. I mean, Pods tends to take a ton of the criticism. Moody, just, you know, not a good matchup for him tonight. I mean, 10 minutes, 0 for 3, -6, didn't do much anything. Had 3 boards and a block. Like, they just, you know, you got nothing out of Moody tonight. Horford was bad again. Here's another kind of, hey, you know, Al Horford, couple of these games, not great for Al. Al looked a little old tonight, I thought. -20 for Al Horford, and trying to figure out the best lineup combinations to get Al involved here, I think, is going to be another trick that Steve Kerr's going to have to master moving forward, because I feel, and look, nobody says anything when they win, but I do feel like Steve and you know, Kuminga's played great here to begin the year, which I think has been the number one top flight bright spot. But I still do get, and this is independent of Kuminga, this has nothing to do. I just mentioned Kuminga because he's somebody who earned his spot, and Steve has said is not going anywhere in the starting lineup. And I think that's the right move at this point. But it's really more for me about the fact that, you know, he's struggling with not wanting to start Draymond at the 5. So he's going to start Post. Post ended up only playing the first 5 of each half and ends up playing 10 minutes. And that's it. No points. He missed a couple of shots. So you start Post over Horford because you don't want to start Horford because you don't want to use up Horford's minutes and you only want to keep him to 20. So then Horford winds up coming off the bench and he's playing with different players. And on a night where Post doesn't have it, you know, maybe you're not getting the most out of Horford. And, you know, but you also aren't maybe getting the most out of Moody because now Moody's coming off the bench and his game's locked into a more, you know, in a box to where he doesn't have the freedom to play where I think he's most effective is in some of those smaller, more flowing offensive lineups. So I hate to bring it all back to the starting lineup and the like, and I do think it's probably still a little bit more coincidental than anything, but I just, the Warriors' best lineups, I think their best starting lineups are smaller starting lineups. And we laid out 3 of them for the regular season. Now you can match up, you can close however you want, but I think Moody seems a little bit out of his normal rhythm of rotation of where you want him. I think Podziemski, a lot of it's more on him and how he's played, but I think Podziemski's a little out of rhythm. I think Horford maybe is a little out of rhythm at this point. But yeah, I mean, Horford's getting the rest and then goes out and doesn't play well. So yeah, that's definitely something to monitor here moving forward. All right, let's take a quick timeout. Good stuff there from the YouTube chat. We'll get more Cole's clicks here coming up between now and 9 o'clock as we roll on here into the night. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627, the number to jump in and join the conversation. Still time for some calls. Coming up next, though, we will get to our Sounds of Dubs OT. More from the YouTube chat, your biggest concern from tonight, your biggest concern, big picture, off of tonight leading into the future as the Warriors drop this one in Milwaukee, 120-110 to fall to 4-2. And we are talking about it right here. Dubs OT with JD on the Sports Leader.
live from downtown.
Curry, way downtown. Bang!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader, streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
All right, welcome back. Sounds of Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. Warriors lose to the Bucks, 120-110, the final from Milwaukee. As we move on here, Warriors at Indiana on Saturday, then they'll be back home, couple of days off. They'll take on the Suns Tuesday, go to Sacramento Wednesday, and then Denver on Friday. That a week from tomorrow, as the Warriors will be in Denver to go at it against the Nuggets. 808 KNBR, the number 415-808-5627. Still have some text messages to get to here on the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line, and we will do that as we roll on here into the night. But let's get to our Dubs OT. Sounds of Dubs OT, and it's going to be a lot of Steve Kerr tonight. I always think the head coach tends to play better on these post-game shows after a loss, right? Usually teams, I think fans want to hear from the players more after a win, and often, times maybe some of the better players go in the locker room or don't come to the podium after losses. So we'll get some quotes here mixed in, but let's get to Steve Kerr, and the first one just about the Bucks generating the offense tonight to put up 120 against the Warriors, and giving credit to them for what they did well.
I thought they did a fantastic job of creating offensive rhythm and playing without fear and knocking down big shots. And then and we didn't handle our switching very well. Our defense struggled tonight when we got, they were small, so we went to an all switching coverage and lineup, and we'll have to watch the tape, but I didn't feel like we did a great job there.
No, and it didn't. And we talked about that right out of the chute. They went to a switching lineup, and it looked like there was some confusion as to when to switch, when not to switch, where to rotate. I think that's where you get into these scenarios where teams start getting a lot of the open 3-point looks, as the Bucks did. And then it also, I think, leaves you out of position to rebound. And I think that's where, the Bucks were able to kind of step up and step in there. And, not a lot of offensive rebounds, but some timely offensive rebounds, especially down the stretch for Milwaukee in this one, which allowed them to have more than enough when the Warriors also give up the 27 points off of 22 turnovers to win this game. Going away at the end was a clutch game with 5 minutes to go, within 5 points, but the Bucks putting the Warriors away down the stretch in this one. All right, let's continue on here. Another one from the head coach of the Warriors, Steve Kerr, addressing exactly what I think is, for a lot of Warrior fans, the most frustrating aspect of the Dubs losing this game. It's the fact that we find out about 4:00 for a 5:00 tip-off here on the West Coast that Giannis is not going to be playing. And for whatever reason, it has been something that more often than anybody would like. I think if you're looking at this thing from the Warriors' perspective, they have a letdown when they go up against a team that has a star sitting. Here's Steve addressing that.
Well, it shouldn't be that way, because we're like 0-12 the last couple of years when the stars don't play. I just told our coaches, if I was an opposing coach, I would just sit the star every time. These are games that as a coach, as a staff, as soon as you hear that the star is out, you're terrified, because we've just seen it a million times. Every NBA team is loaded with talent. You saw those guys out there, firing threes, and everybody can play in this league. And when the star sits, everybody gets excited. This game did not surprise me, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back, and unfortunately, it has been the case for the Warriors. And I was running back through it, Cole, as we were kind of sitting here, and even post Jimmy Butler trade, I'm looking back at Warriors lose to the Mavs right before the All-Star break, but in the aftermath of the Jimmy Butler trade, So Jimmy's on the team there. But no, Kyrie was playing still in that game. But Anthony Davis was not. The newly acquired Anthony Davis was not playing in that game. So they lose. And I'm just going through the losses after the Jimmy Butler trades. The Warriors went 23-8 to finish the year. So no Anthony Davis against Dallas in what was the first Warrior loss after the Jimmy Butler trade. And then you move forward to the next, and it was on March the 1st against Philadelphia. And that was a game where no Joel Embiid in that game. If you remember, that was the Quentin Grimes game. Quentin Grimes goes for 44 in that one. And the Warriors end up losing that game. So yeah, no Anthony Davis, no Embiid. There was the game on March 17th against Denver where the Nuggets rested their stars. And remember, it was a highly anticipated game. And if you recall, the Warriors did the same thing the next night and then beat the Bucks inside Shea Center on Tuesday, the 18th. It was the second of a back-to-back. But yeah, so 3 losses there as you run through it. And then, yeah, looking at some of the other games that stand out, Trae Young played. The Jimmy Butler return game was another one of those losses. San Antonio was able to beat the Warriors. That was a pretty bad loss, and the Clippers had everybody. So yeah, there are more, Cole, than I thought. Even going back, my memory was not serving me well there. And then when I started to go back, as Steve Kerr was saying, and I'm like, oh yeah, man, even in the Jimmy Butler, like half of their losses with Jimmy Butler are these games where the stars are out, and that's without question not the best look. Let's continue on here. More in terms of tonight and all of the turnovers, 22 of them, 27 points off of the turnovers. Here's what Steve Kerr had to say about the Warriors giving away those possessions.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's our 6th game in 10 days to start the year, a lot of travel. And I'm not using as an excuse. I'm just stating as a fact. I didn't think we looked like the team that I just watched the last couple of games. Looked a little bit more like the team in Portland. So there's gonna be these games, for everybody. Every team in the league is in an 82 game season where everybody's playing at such a high pace and playing so hard. There's going to be games where the mental focus isn't quite there, and tonight was one of those games for us. So we've got to regroup and bounce back in Indianapolis.
Yeah, mental and or physical fatigue. Again, I think the physical fatigue you can understand. The mental fatigue, I don't know. To me, it's too early in the year for mental fatigue, especially when the goal is to win a championship. You're a week into the season. 6 games in 10 is no joke. The Warriors are clearly an older team. They've got some big wins here, I think, to begin the year. They've beaten the Clippers. They've beaten the Nuggets. They handled business in real professional ways against the Lakers, I thought, on opening night, and against the Grizzlies in the first of the back-to-back to begin this week. So I think you look at it and the Warriors have handled themselves for the most part, I think, pretty well here to start the year. But I can give you physical fatigue. I'm not sure I can give you mental fatigue on October 30th. That's where I'm not feeling that as much from the head coach. Let's get to Kerr's thoughts on Al Horford. This is another one. A lot of good Kerr cuts, really kind of hitting on everything. Horford has not played well, and you never know. When a guy that's 39, and I'm not saying he's cooked or anything like that, but you never know year to year when somebody as experienced as Al Horford is in the NBA is going to just have that year where there is the complete drop off, and he just is not the same player. I don't think we're anywhere near that point yet, but Horford has had now multiple games where he has been a real net negative, and this is two consecutive games. I mean, Horford in this game tonight, you look up and he's not hitting shots, which is the number one thing that he's out there to do, and he's also out there to be a ball mover. And so he had a couple of assists, but he had a couple of turnovers. He's 1 for 4 on threes. He 1 of 6 overall. He was the worst player on the floor tonight in terms of plus minus. And you go back a couple of nights ago in the game at home against the Clippers, and the game that they gave him the night off ahead of because they wanted him to be out there to go up against the Clippers. And he was at one point a minus 23 and ended up minus 12 with a better second half than first half. But it was ugly for Horford in that first half. And you look, and he's 2 for 11, and I think 1 for 7 from 3 in the last 2 games. And that's with Horford getting the 2 games prior to that off. So, I mean, you look at Al Horford to begin the year, I think that's another one of these little, might not be a thing in the grand scheme of things, but Horford has struggled in the early going, I think, for the most part for the Warriors. Here's what Steve Kerr had to say about Big Al.
I feel good about Al. I think, it's always difficult going to a new team and getting accustomed to your surroundings, to your teammates, to the new style of play, all that stuff. So, Al, I'm not worried about Al at all. It's a slow start to the season for him, but he's Al Horford. I mean, he's still moving really well. He's a fantastic basketball player, and he's going to help us win a lot of games this year.
All right, so no concern there, as you would expect. Again, I'm a little concerned. You'd want him to get out and I think have things be a little bit more smooth in terms of the shot making. It's one thing if they're, and maybe that's the thing that for sure will come around. And so that's why you're not maybe as concerned if you're Steve Kerr, because I do think he's moved well. But let's be honest. I mean, the Warriors didn't get Al Horford to be a defensive stopper and go 1 for 6. They got Al Horford to stretch the defense so they could play some bigger lineups at the wings and also be somebody that they can run offense through in some of the same ways that they run offense through Draymond Green. And so I think, to this point, again, early, but it is a little concerning, because you want guys to get comfortable. You want guys that come in from other teams to be relaxed and on schedule and have some early success to just kind of calm down any of the questions or concerns. And look, Al's going to play. He's going to play a lot when he's active, but a couple of matchups where you'd think you'd want to have him out there, he has not played well in here in these last couple of games. He played great in the game against Denver, ends up taking the 2 games off against Portland and Memphis. And you look at coming back and then didn't play well, better in the second half, but didn't play well in the game against the Clippers. So I think that's a small concern here. And then one other one, just to kind of wrap it up, and then we'll get to a little Brandon Podziemski quickly. Moses Moody tonight, another one of these. It was kind of startling to see Moody only have 10 minutes, but he didn't hit shots. And I think the answer here, though, is telling as it relates to just where the Warriors are at and where Steve Kerr is at in the beginning of the year in terms of trying to find those combinations. Finding those combinations, tinker tonight. It does take at times quite a few games for Steve to find a rotation that he's set on, that he likes on. You've got the Horford's going to play rotation. You've got the Horford's not going to play rotation. You've got the Draymond needs to not start at center rotation. You've got the going to play Kuminga at the 3 rotation. You've got the going to play Kuminga at the 4 rotation. You've got the Pods' starting rotation. It's a lot. And he searches. And again, I think a lot of it is coincidental. When they don't play well, it feels like he's trying to search more because obviously they're not playing well. But Moody was a guy who didn't play well, but got out there at the short end of the stick in terms of minutes. And here's what Steve said about that.
No, we were just searching for combinations, and I played Buddy a little bit more because he had knocked down a shot and kept him out there. But we're looking for combinations that are clicking, and it was game just didn't go Moses' way tonight. But he'll be ready for Saturday, and we'll be ready to put him out there.
So kind of a mixed bag for Moses Moody in his return. Knocked the rust off, comes back, plays exceptionally well against the Grizzlies, as did Kuminga and Podziemski. All the young guys played well against the Grizzlies, and then Moses Moody trying to find his game a little bit in this one tonight. And so much of it for Moses Moody is so frequently, it's just, is he getting good looks and is he knocking down the open three? It's everything. So much of everything in the league now is, are guys hitting shots. And, Moody, missed a couple shots in the game tonight. And then all of a sudden Kerr goes to a different lineup and then he winds up not getting a whole heck of a lot of run. And you look up at the end of the night and it was Buddy over Moody, because why? Well, Buddy was hitting some shots tonight and ended up making a couple of threes on a night where the Warriors did not shoot the three ball well. All right. Another couple of things to get to here. And I want to hear from Brandon Podziemski. The Warriors today, a little bit of big picture news, exercised the 4th year team option on Brandon Podziemski. So that's for next season, the 2026-27 season. So that's a formality, but the deadline to do so was today. So Podziemski will play his 3rd season this year. He becomes someone who's extension eligible before the final year of his rookie contract. So the final year of his rookie contract now will be next season. And the Warriors knock it. Yep, you're here under contract for next year. That's kind of how the NBA does those contracts. You pick up the option a year ahead, and then we'll see what happens with Podziemski in terms of an extension. He is extension eligible here this coming summer and on into the fall. And then after that, if the Warriors don't, assuming he's still on the roster, if they don't end up doing a contract extension with Podziemski, it winds up being a restricted free agency type scenario, as was the case with Jonathan Kuminga, of course, that everybody remembers very well. Moses Moody didn't quite get to that point. He did his extension. He did the extension ahead and didn't get to a point where he was a restricted free agent, and ended up on I think a pretty fair player and team friendly deal as it related to the contract that he signed. So stay tuned on that one. But the Warriors did pick up Podziemski's option, and BP acknowledged that post game in his home area tonight, going back and playing against the Bucks.
Yeah, blessed, feel gratitude for sure. Happy to be a part of an organization that feels the same way about it that I do. Obviously, right now, soaking in the loss, but in total, just super blessed that front office, staff, they want me here for another year.
And that's a formality. Again, I mean, there's no way you would not pick up that option at that point. I mean, he would at that point, you don't pick up the option. He's an unrestricted free agent, and you could lose him for anything. So you keep him cost effective for Brandon Podziemski next year. And he's somebody obviously that's trade eligible at any point. And he's also, though, again, extension eligible. And so you kind of wonder, I mean, some of the comments about, wanting to be a guy that can help this team now, and then maybe be more one of the faces moving forward after Steph's gone. Is Pods thinking about the extension? Like, you want guys comfortable and, thinking about the potential of having to earn that by doing things maybe a different way, trying to score more and the like. Pods is at his best when he just goes out, makes the simple play, moves the ball, takes the right shot, takes his charges, and is that connector that Steve Kerr so greatly likes to have on this Warriors roster. All right, let's take a quick timeout. We'll come back, and we're going to wrap things up with Fun with Numbers. We'll also do a quick installment of Cole's clicks here as Cole Lapelt sitting in for Kyle Haar. It's John Dickinson. It's Dubs OT with JD as the Warriors lose to the Bucks 120-110, and we're talking about it right here on the Sports Leader.
is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun
I'm a fun guy.
with numbers
No, I'm just having fun.
on KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, welcome back. Warriors lose 120 to 110. We'll get some Cole's clicks coming up here, and also let everybody know we're going to be on immediately following the Warriors and the Pacers on Saturday evening as the Warriors play at 4 o'clock. So look for us at about 6:30. Letting everybody know also 6:30 if there is a game 7. I know everybody in the Bay, but a little bit of a scheduling note here. If there is a game 7, so if the Dodgers win tomorrow and there's a game 7 of the World Series, then that's going to be a YouTube only show. So Kyle Haar and myself will join. Maybe we'll get a little Greg Silver to hop in on the back end of that show. It'll be a YouTube chat heavy night breaking down the Warriors and the Indiana Pacers. That's if there's an MLB game 7, which of course nobody in the Bay Area is hoping that there is. The Blue Jays can get the job done tomorrow. And then if they do that, we will be on the radio as well as on YouTube and Twitch and all of that come 6:30 after the Warriors take on the Indiana Pacers on Saturday. So let's get to our fun with numbers here quickly. Not as much fun when you get beat tonight by a shorthanded Milwaukee team as the Warriors did. So they fall to 4-2, 1-2 on the road. First game against an Eastern Conference team for the Warriors this year. Bucks ended a 3-game losing streak to the Warriors. Warriors swept the Bucks last year, beat them in Chase Center in March and beat them in February as well, right after the Jimmy Butler trade, one of the more impressive Warrior wins in the early going after they got that victory in Chicago. So clutch game tonight, just the second clutch game of the first 5, again, within 5 points with 5 minutes or less to go. And the Warriors were able to beat Denver in a clutch game a week ago. Tonight, they lose to the Bucks in a clutch game in Milwaukee tonight. 22 turnovers. That's been the one common theme for the Warriors in the 2 losses. They have been over 20 turnovers in both games. Careless turnovers, many of them not a season high with 22, but anytime you're pushing 20 or over 20, you're over 20 in terms of turnovers, you are in big time trouble. I don't care how good you are, and I don't care who you're playing. And the Warriors got up to the 22 mark in terms of turnovers tonight, 25 in Portland, so not a season worst. But the one thing in common from both of the Warriors' L's to this point this season, second time this year, 3 players had at least 20 points in the same game. Tonight it was Steph Curry, Jonathan Kuminga, and Jimmy Butler. Butler with 23, Kuminga 24. Steph ends up with 27 in that one. Again, it also happened in the Denver game where the Warriors had 4 players score 20 or more points. Again, we talked about Indiana on Saturday. Warriors against the defending Eastern Conference champion Pacers. Of course, not the same Pacers team without Tyrese Halliburton, who is injured, but they will be playing at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in downtown Indianapolis on Saturday, and we will be with you right after that game right here on the Sports Leader. Steph had 27, team high. His free throw streak ended at 57, second longest of his career, only an 80. He had an 80 from before. He had an 80 free throw streak going back to the end of 2019 in the regular season all the way to 2021. Kuminga ended up with his second 20-plus point game. He's playing really well. Again, got to cut down on the turnovers tonight, but Kuminga kept the Warriors in the game, I thought, for the most part in the first half. And you could even kind of wonder, should there have been a little bit more? I know the Warriors are kind of going out of their way right now to not really feature Kuminga. He's kind of getting his in the context of the offense, and the Warriors, there was maybe a little bit of a case to be made to just put the ball in Kuminga's hands a little bit in that second half. Once the game maybe was getting away there a little bit in the fourth quarter, because Kuminga really was taking advantage of the matchup. But again, that's not really I think they're so hyper focused on trying to make sure Kuminga's sticking to the game plan in terms of fitting into the offense and all that, and not stretching it out. And he made the most of the opportunities that he had in this one. So that's our fun with numbers. Wrapping it up here in our final 4 or 5 minutes or so with our final installment of Cole's Clicks, and appreciate Cole LaPelt again filling in for Kyle Haar tonight here on Dubs OT. And Cole will be around from time to time. He's our super sub sixth man on Dubs OT, a lot of times working behind the scenes on many of these nights, but at the forefront in our San Francisco studios, and we appreciate Cole. So let's get our final installment. Let's run through. We're going to run through 5 and then our comment of the night here in the chat, the best YouTube chat in sports, before we call it for this Thursday. What do we got here, Cole? Let's go. Gene, our buddy Gene McIntyre. Quietly, Jimmy's been making the 3 ball at a high percentage. Yeah, he has. I made the comment a couple of games ago that Jimmy really, his 3-point shot looks like it's got a lot more arc on it. I mean, a lot more arc on it. I think it was so flat when he came to the Warriors at the middle of last year in February. He looked like a guy that really hadn't been getting a lot of shots up because he had been spending most of his time with Miami basically suspended and or injured. But yeah, 1 for 2 tonight, 3 for 4 against the Clippers, 2 for 2 from 3-point range against Memphis. He had an 0 for in Portland, a 2 for 4 against Denver, and a 1 for 2 against the Lakers. Jimmy is shooting 57% from 3 to begin the year. Impressive. Jimmy, what is it? 9 of 17, I believe, for Jimmy Butler to begin the year from 3-point range. So good stuff there from Jimmy. Let's get another one. Cole, Bennett Roth, Kuzma somehow made some backbreakers. Yeah, Kuzma played well tonight. I know I've been on Kuzma, but Kuzma hit some big shots, and I thought Kuzma, maybe because Giannis was out, brought a more appropriate energy that we don't always see from Kyle Kuzma. But I do give Kyle Kuzma credit. He was kind of a thorn in the Warriors side. 8 boards, 4 assists, knocked down a 3, 10-point. Like he had some turnovers himself, but he was a plus 10, and I thought played an energetic game tonight. Yeah, hat tip to Kyle Kuzma, who has been somewhat maligned in the past on this show. Next up in the chat, Rebel to Sounds, Moody, GP2 and Post combined for 0 points. I know there was some, not concern, but question about GP2. Didn't play a lot tonight, and Ryan Rollins is kind of doing his thing. Like GP2 hasn't looked great to begin the year, and he's been somebody that's maybe looked a little bit older, in the early going of this year, and maybe not quite as able to keep up against some of these younger, quicker type players. And so I think he's teetering on the brink of maybe not being in the Warriors rotation, especially once they get a DeAnthony Melton back into the fold. And I think he's trying to give Steve Kerr a little bit of a nod to Will Richard as well. So, all right, let's get 2 more, and then we'll get our comment of the night. Gene, get Melton back. That changes things at the point of attack, as well as creating his own shot. No question. I mean, Melton really changes so many things. I mean, he's somebody that can play with your big lineup. He can play with your small lineup. He can be, as I've said a lot, Podziemski insurance. I don't know that night to night the Warriors have a lot of guys to go to if Podziemski's having an off night. But when Melton comes back, Melton is somebody that they can go to if Podziemski's having an off night, or hell, if Melton's just having a good night. Although I think they are definitely going to protect him from injury and fatigue and the like here once he does ultimately return. Do we have 1 more or 2 more, Cole? I've lost count. We got 1 more and then the last one? 1 more and then the last one. All right, Bennett Roth. What about Draymond, though? Where were his big playmaking moments tonight? Yeah, tonight was a night where Draymond, and again, I think there's been 2 games where Draymond distinctly has just not had it. And it was the Portland game. It's the 2 games the Warriors lost. 32 minutes tonight. He wound up being a net positive. But yeah, they took away, I thought, some of the passing, although he had 6 assists and only 1 turnover in the game. But yeah, he just didn't seem to be as energetic as you would want, from Draymond Green, and the Warriors are just so dependent on their older players to kind of lead the way. All right, before we get out of here, let's get our comment of the night. What do we got?
Now, time for the Dubs OT comment of the night.
San Jose Jazz fan 8. How many times have the Warriors choked against teams without their stars? Yeah, that one deserves a repeat, because we did the research on it. We fact checked that bad boy. But my initial, I think the Warriors were winning so much last year at the end, I kind of forgot the games they lost and the specific circumstances. But no, there were a bunch of them in there. No AD, no Embiid, no Jokic, and now no Giannis in 2025-26, October 30, and the Warriors lay an egg in many ways tonight. So, yeah, it has been something. Steve Kerr said they've lost 12 straight when a team's got a star out. I don't know if it's 12 straight, but it's been too many. And a team with the championship aspirations the Warriors have, to me, you can't have letdowns like tonight. You can have letdowns like Portland, second of a back-to-back against a young and up-and-coming team. To me, you cannot have letdowns tonight when a star player goes out an hour before the game. That needs to be a game that you get, especially considering the fact that the Warriors, it's the start of a stretch where they're going to have 10 of 12 away from Chase Center here over the next few weeks. All right, that's going to do it. Big thanks to Cole LaPelt in our San Francisco studios, again, sitting in for Kyle Haar. Cole, thanks to Raph, we know that. And who else do we have helping to cut tonight?
Just Raph tonight. Raph and I holding the station down.
Just Raph tonight. Great stuff from Raph, the great Raph Corral, great Cole LaPelt. Kyle Haar's back on Saturday. We'll be back on Saturday. Thanks to everybody in the YouTube chat. Thanks to the callers. Couple of good texts here as well. And one thing we talked about, the defense tonight, Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line, the defense, other than the Clippers game, has not really been there for the Warriors. And yeah, a lot of communication errors for them in this one tonight. So big thanks to everybody. Back on Saturday, and we'll be talking Dubs basketball right here on the Sports Leader. John Dickinson.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Big audio quality show.
You are a sicko, and I appreciate you for it, because I'm a sicko.
I just know they kicked our ass tonight.
No class, no balls.
Everything's gonna be all right.